The paper making process begins with trees. The first step is bringing the wood to the mill. The wood arrives by truck, train, and barge, some in the form of ready-to-use chips and some as logs. In the wood yard, long logs are unloaded from trucks and either stored or put directly on the infeed deck to the debarking drum. The debarking drum is a rotating cylindrical drum. As the drum rotates, the logs hit against each other, causing the bark to come off. The bark falls through the slits in the debarking drum and is conveyed to the bark pile, where it will be burned to produce power and steam. The debarked log then goes to the chipper. The chipper is a rotating disc with knife blades that takes up to a 50-foot log and cuts it into chips in about 2 seconds. The chips are then stored in large piles in the wood yard. The next step is the cooking process. The chips are transported to the pulp mill through tunnels, and before they reach the digester, they are put through a screening process to check for thickness and size and to remove any remaining sawdust. The size of the chip enables it to cook properly in the digester. The chips are put into the digester, which is basically a giant pressure cooker where the chips are mixed with a cooking chemical and subjected to high temperatures and pressure. The cooking process separates the wood fibers from the lignin. Lignin is the glue that holds the wood fibers together. When the pulp comes out of the digester, it looks fluffy and it is brown. After it is washed, it can be used for products such as grocery bags and cardboard boxes. At Cortland, to use the pulp to make paper, the next step is the bleaching process. An environmentally advanced bleaching process called oxygen delignification is used along with a 3-stage bleaching process. In this process, we dissolve the bark-colored lignin to bleach the pulp to the desired brightness and color. The bleached pulp is then sent to the paper machines. The paper machines at Cortland are 20 to 30 feet wide and longer than a football field. The paper machine consists of several sections. The first section is the forming section. In the forming section, the bleached pulp, which is more than 99% water, is mixed with several additives, imparting the properties needed for the grade of paper to be produced. The highly diluted pulp solution is then forced out horizontally through a small slit into a rapidly moving fine mesh screen called the forming fabric. The forming fabric would be very similar to a moving window screen. Water drains through the screen, fibers interlock and form a sheet of paper. At this stage, the paper is still too weak to travel by itself without falling apart, so the sheet is transferred onto a textile fabric called a felt. The felt is like a thick towel that absorbs water from the paper as it is being squeezed through the presses. The next stage is the drying stage. The dryers consist of rotating steel cylinders that are finely polished and have steam inside. The sheet of paper goes around each one of these dryers. The last stage is the calendaring stage. Calendaring involves squeezing the paper between 2 steel rolls that are pressed together very tightly. This stage brings the paper to its final thickness and smoothness. By the time the paper has traveled through the paper machine, it is down to about 5% water. The paper is rolled onto huge spools which are up to 30 feet wide and then cut and rewound into smaller rolls. Some rolls are sent to rewinders where they are cut to specific customer orders. Others go to the converting department for cut size, such as 8.5 by 11 copier paper. The finished paper is then packaged and shipped out in trucks and boxcars to destinations across the country.